no stress. Awesome. All right, it was so great to talk to you, Ben. We've had a few conversations before, and I've always enjoyed them. We're both passionate about trauma. So and various things around that. So I'm really happy to have you on the channel today. So yes, everyone, I want to introduce I want to introduce Ben Tannahill of the Drunken Buddha, and I'll get him to tell you all about this in a minute. He's a somatic inquiry facilitator and recovered alcoholic and trauma enthusiast. Is that right? Did I get that right?
So I think I put non-suffering enthusiast, not really enthusiast of trauma.
Okay, all right.
Transforming trauma. Just I'm enthusiastic about being happy and enjoying life.
yes, me too. Let's talk. So we studied embodied processing together, which is how we came to know each other, even though we live on opposite sides of the planet. And it's one of those incredible approaches to processing trauma that we both really dived into and leaned into, and still constantly learning about and absolutely love. So we'll probably dive into talk a little bit about that too as we go. You recently conducted an incredible workshop on how to fully embody emotions, which I participated in and really, really loved. I've been back to the replay a couple of times. It really helped me to learn how to embody my emotions more, which even 10, 11 years now beyond separation, I'm still learning how to do, because I spent so long suppressing them and trying to escape from feeling those emotions, horrible, still learning and still, it's a lifelong journey. There's no, destination here.
For sure.
You have a wonderful body of work on, working with cravings and addictions too, which is something that every separated parent's familiar with. That glass that turns into a bottle of wine.
The glass of wine. I imagine,
It turns into a bottle, and you think, oh crikey, what am I doing? And and beyond, it's obviously it's a spectrum, and different people handle things in different ways. And you have a YouTube channel in the makings too, and it's great to be talking. We'll dive in soon, but first, tell us a little bit about yourself and Drunken Buddha and your journey so far in life.
Yeah, so I'll give you just the sort of the brief. Yeah, no problem. I'll give you the brief update. Was going through life. I seem to remember being very boisterous and loud and happy as a very young child. And I don't really know what happened. I can't pinpoint anything, but at some point it turned into, I always had this sense that something happened, or some series of things happened. There was more of a turning, more introverted, more fearful, became very anxious. At school, I was not particularly comfortable in my own skin, feeling very awkward and anxious. And it was when I was 15, I discovered alcohol, and was just like, yes. So that, I've heard many people describe it similarly. It's like sort of love at first sight. It's just this sudden relaxation of all these layers of anxiety and fear and shame and stuff. They just dissolve, and I could step into myself a little bit more, be a little bit more authentic. And that kind of, I swiftly became renowned for sort of being the guy who would get drunkest and throw up everywhere. And that sort of turned into just an addiction to drinking. I went to university, which didn't help, obviously. And eventually, just get to the good stuff. This continued for about 10 years. Probably the most intense when I was probably about, I don't know, 20. It was also pretty intense around 25, 26. I stopped when I was 28. I'd been getting addiction therapy. That was on the NHS, so it was free. It was amazing. And the woman who helped me, she was awesome. I think back very fondly to her now. She was super nice and supportive, and sort of hit my rock bottom when I was 28, or just a few days before my 28th birthday. After I remember it was like Easter weekend. I had like 4 days. I don't really remember. I had the flat to myself, and just went on this massive bender that ended in tears, and something flipped inside. And I went on started on the healing journey, basically. And I went to AA and I started meditating, getting into spirituality. But then the suffering was like still there, essentially. I'd stopped drinking and things improved for sure, because you don't have the hangovers, but I was still scoffing tons of chocolate, very, very anxious, still super anxious, tons of coffee. And it's like, what the hell do I do? And I slowly, I went on all sorts of retreats and things trying to figure this out. But it wasn't until I found the somatic work, I started simply turning towards my feelings, that the relief started to come of any kind. And I did a couple of sessions with someone and I started crying in the second session. I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I need. Like to cry, like to feel all of this stuff. And then the meditation, everything else started working much more effectively as well, actually. And so I've just been on the journeys, you know, training in various modalities, learning more and more how to step into my own emotions, because there's no amount of meditation you can do or stuff you can learn or thoughts you can think about how you can fix everything. And there's no way you can arrange your life that will ever actually, you know, resolve those emotions, which, as we'll probably cover, there's a lot of it and it's pushed very, very deep down for various reasons. And that's what's really driving a lot of the pain in our life, a lot of like the dysfunction. If there's some behaviors we're doing, which we're sort of questioning, that's often driven by a lot of this stuff. And that was my journey of learning how to step into these energies, to these emotions more and more fully, because that's how you transform them, by letting them be as they are, as much as possible, without being like, well, I shouldn't feel like this, or feeling a little self-conscious perhaps about, you know, feeling anger maybe, or crying, some of these things. And there's, you know, a lot of stigma around emotions in our society in all sorts of contexts. And we're not taught about this. So that's getting into the subject. So that's kind of how I arrived here. And it's really, really valuable. I wouldn't trade it for anything, for sure.
Perfect. I know. I love that, actually. Like I wouldn't trade my separation journey either, and probably half the people listening are going to go, what? Really? I want this to go away. But having been through it and reflecting back now, and I'm still going through it to some degree, I'm living my life. And, you know, these things, you know, affect you and come in and have an impact. But the learning about myself and how I experience life and how I could experience life more fully, and how I'm starting to, and, you know, in moving beyond, you know, that drama of separation, and having children and being a sole parent, you know, just me, no one else, you know, and all of that. I can relate to a lot of the, you know, talk.
They're sort of different contexts. Different contexts, but they're sort of the principles of the structural stuff is all the kind of the same, of like these big events of something big happens, you know, there's this huge energy sensations we don't know how to deal with, we don't know how to manage them. And then it's like, crap, what do I do? We're looking for solutions. And maybe some people find it in alcohol. Some people find it in working loads. You know, whatever sort of gets people through the next day.
Yes, I think I did all of those things. I worked, I drank a hell of a lot, you know, I did all kinds of things, the behaviors, the substance, the everything, just to escape feeling the pain. It was horrible. So great. And I think, you know, as a separated parent, particularly a sole parent, you get stuck in survival mode. Like you get stuck in that mode of which sort of contributes to the trying to escape what you're feeling, I suppose. Like it's like, I'm just going to survive here, I'm just going to keep pedaling, I'm just going to keep going, you know, and I'm going to control everything, because if I don't, it's all going to overwhelm me, it's going to engulf me, you know, I'm going to drown. So let's talk about emotions. And I'm sure every separated parent on this listening to this will relate to that roller coaster of emotions that hits you. And as you said, it's not just separated parents, it's everyone. We're all human beings, but those big events that happen seem to bring it all up. And ultimately, you know, emotions are messengers that there's something going on down there. And I think so many of us get really disconnected from how we feel, like we're actually not experiencing our lives, and through emotions, because as human beings, that's emotions are a way that we experience our lives, I guess, or get feedback from our life experience. And so many of us are just sort of looking down there and feeling something and going, oh shit, and more just sort of making up some sort of story about what that means and then trying to get away.
Well, there's so much. Well, I can just jump in there. There's so much juice in what everything you were just talking about. So I feel that just what we take emotions to be in our society, because you have to realize, our understanding of emotions is sort of taught to us in many ways. We implicitly soak it in from the people around us, the parents, the teachers, and so on, who in almost none of them really had any idea what was going on with their emotions. If you had one person in your life who was able to really hold space for you, and some people are a bit in touch with their emotions, so people who really understand how they work and how they move and what they need, and what a person going through some really strong emotions needs to be given, like space, acceptance, and so on. And so we're kind of taught that emotions are like this annoying thing that kind of gets in the way. It's like you're trying to survive, you're trying to do your stuff. It's like, I need to get through the divorce and go to work, and this fucking emotion this keeps arising, and it's like some annoying like a seagull that's just like crashed in through the window, or something. I don't know. So I moved to the sea recently. I have seagulls everywhere. And you just like, get the seagull out of my kitchen, man. Like I'm trying to get on with my day.
Yes.
But this kind of attitude, this kind of animosity towards emotions drives them further down, actually entrenches them deeper, because just as you said, they're messengers. They kind of, I like to think of them as being they're like their own little personality. It's kind of on a mission. So each one has its own personality. Like anger has its own flavor.
You describe it like that.
And it kind of it arises like a superhero. It's like, oh, we've got to do something here. We've got a job to do. Yes. And you've got to let it do the job. It won't relax until it's completed its mission. And so when we push it down, it doesn't just disappear. I think that's what a lot of people think. People think, oh, I've pushed the anxiety down by watching Netflix for 4 hours. It's fine. Good.
Yeah, I'm fine now.
Now it's gone.
Yeah.
But it hasn't gone. It's now stored as a kind of energetic like readiness potential kind of in the nerves, and as soon as a trigger comes along, it'll spring right back up. And that's kind of why you have to pay attention to emotions, because there's only two ways out. You can either pay attention to them or your kitchen will just keep filling with seagulls. Yes. you have to keep tranquilizing seagulls all day just so you can get to your fridge or whatever. This metaphor is going a bit far now, but it actually works quite well. You're wading through unconscious seagulls to get a cup of coffee, and it's after a certain point, you're like, I've got to start paying attention to these seagulls, and
I'm doing something about this. I'm going to fix this.
Do something about them. And but in this case, that kind of fixing attitude is kind of like inviting more seagulls in. It's a very calm, open, as welcoming as you can be, like imagining these emotions that we've been pushing down are little children, little parts of you that are crying for attention. They've got something to say. They want to cry. They want to scream. They want to kick. They want to curl up. They want to freeze.
Yes.
Protect you in all these different ways, and they will not, categorically will not move until they have been allowed to do that.
No,
and I think
they need to be heard.
And I notice when they get pushed down, people don't really realize what's going on. I think when they're really pushed down, your whole body is thick, contracted, dense.
Yes.
And there's all this stuff, and people think that's just what their body is like. It's like, well, my body is sort of thick and dense, but it's actually half of what they're experiencing in their body is repressed emotion, essentially. And they don't realize that all this stuff below the surface is actually having a really powerful impact on how they're living their lives, how they behave. It's a really crazy truth. Not only when the emotion disappears, not only does it not disappear, but it in fact still keeps having an influence on your life.
Yes.
Even if you're not aware of it, even if it's just very deeply buried, if you think you feel fine and you find yourself just reaching for wine or, on the phone or on your phone all day, it's because there's this deep stuff in the background, this background hum of suffering, we often call it, that is a result of all these repressed, these emotions, these seagulls in your kitchen.
Yes, I love them.
Even when they're quiet. Yeah, even when they're quiet, they're still there, like in the background.
Yeah, but
yeah,
we're just
so
not
that's what I would
comfortable.
say.
We're just not comfortable with these. And yeah, like these seagulls are just doing their thing. And yeah, we just want to keep pushing them away, but it's a vicious cycle, like you said, like it just keeps going on. And you know, we learn how to do this from our parents, don't we? Or our caregivers in childhood, you know, like from the other adults in our lives that looked after us, who were responsible for our care, that we're attached to in some way, you know, to receive care. Because as a child, you're a little person. Now, you touched on sort of, you know, the children that are inside you, but essentially, you know, when you were that age, you didn't have the resources to handle any of the stuff going on in your life. You need someone to look after you and show you the way. And, you know, our parents do the best that they can with the resources that they have, right? That they learnt from their parents and their parents' parents, and it all gets passed down. And yes, that's a whole nother conversation, isn't it, about epigenetics and all that stuff. But and I love that topic too. But it's yeah, so juicy. Maybe we'll make another video about that, Ben. But you know, we learn how to be in the world from our parents, like, you know, how to interpret our emotions. Our parents, you know, mostly shut it down because they're not comfortable with it, because they're not comfortable with their own.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
no, they're not
go
at
to
all.
your room until you've calmed down, until you've stopped being so angry. Like, seriously, can't just stop it, you know.
Yeah, I remember. Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I had that. I did that. I was exploring that actually in a session. I was moving in just last week, I think, moving into the sad, like the pain I felt at having that to me, right? I'm really upset or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. But then just at that exact moment when you need your parent to support you most with dealing with the emotions, they reject you and cast you out, even though it's still in the same house. It's a symbolic casting out.
Yeah.
To then until you have repressed your emotions enough that you're allowed to rejoin the family unit. It's like, that's not allowed. You can't be part of the family if you're going to be angry or sad or whatever it is, you know, particularly anger.
Yeah, let's stop crying.
And that people don't realize. They're like, oh, I just sent them out until they calm down. Like, what's the big deal? It's like the nervous system is like a sponge that just goes, all right, henceforth, no, we're not doing that anymore. Like, no way, absolutely not. And that's then there for life until you start to explore that repressive mechanism. That's there for the rest of your life. You will not feel comfortable expressing anger because unconsciously, like, you know, it threatens your attachment to the family. Right. It's like, if I express anger, there's an unconscious belief. Anger equals like abandonment, rejection. And the whole like freeze response of your nervous system will come in to just like, nope. That cuts you off from that part of yourself, right? That simply cuts you off. And then that anger is so useful. It's what allows you to like go forth into the world and like, you know, stand up for yourself.
Yes, it's your power. It's your, you know, for a lot of men that I've worked with, it's your masculinity. It's your standing on your you know, in your two shoes. It's your power for any human being. Yeah, absolutely. And it's shut down, and it's something that's actually taught, you know, by the you know, the people who teach people how to be parents. And, you know, this is the general norm. This is what you do, you know, like you leave babies to cry. They're going to calm down on their own, which is, nothing could be further from the truth.
No.
Yes, and I want to talk to all the people who have done this with their children, all the parents, because I've done this with my children, and I look back now and I go, because this is what you do. Like, you're an exhausted parent, right? And, you know, and the baby keeps waking up at night and you're just like, oh my God. And especially when you're doing it on your own, it's just you and you just can't take anymore at some point. And so you listen to the, you know, and you know, in our society, there isn't support for mothers raising a child for parents,
No.
you know, raising a child as well. So you know, that's a whole nother topic as well. I love this.
What's really interesting, I don't know, I mean, I'm not a parent, but I have started reading about, you know, raising children more and more, because it teaches us so much about ourselves and what we actually need.
Yes.
Because, you know, our needs our base needs are most intense as a child, but they still exist later on in life.
Yes.
And I was reading the work of Darcia Narvaez. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Right. No, I haven't actually. Yeah.
So she has a concept called the evolved nest, and she sort of looked at different more hunter-gatherer tribes or different areas, you know, just researching evolutionarily and from various historical perspectives of what children need. And she has this idea of the evolved nest, of this kind of like, humans still need a nest. We don't, there's a seagull just over there that's just had chicks.
Right. Okay.
Maybe I'll send you a photo and you can put it over. I'll put it over the top of the video because it's really cute. And so it's a natural nest right there, right? But humans need a nest too. Yes. But this nest is made of other human beings, and so it wouldn't just be one mother. You'd have a whole village of like humans who would take turns caring for each other's children. So there's always someone available, right? Yeah. And this idea is like the babies are held like chimpanzees. I can't remember if it's chimpanzees, it's a specific ape, or maybe all of them, that hold their children. The babies are held all the time. They're never let go of. Yes. Skin to skin. It's got to be skin to skin contact. And humans need that. Human babies needs that skin to skin contact, never being hit or sent to your room or anything like that, you know? Yes. Just being given as much unconditional love. But it comes through the body. And when they talk about embodying emotions, like looking after children, I imagine, I mean, tell me if I'm talking out of my hat here, or indeed anything else round and inappropriate, but you would raise a child ideally by it's a physical thing. It's not like a technical, abstract, theoretical exercise of like you know, trying to fix a radiator or something. It's like a embodied, physical, skin on skin kind of thing. Yes, and as a parent, you're there with all your stuff and your ways of dealing with emotions and relationships and this parenting thing. Dude, there's no handbook for that, right? That you've learned from your parents, and all the stuff that comes up inside you unconsciously, like, you know, like you're not even aware of what you're doing half the time. Like it's just stuff that you've just learned because, you know, that's how our bodies work too, right? Things are imprinted along the way into and become sort of a part of our subconscious mind. Well, I think that's what I was going to say with the village. That's the part I missed was, you would have learned all this stuff from the village, right? There would have been there's a structure that teaches you it. Whereas now in modern society, that's gone completely. So everyone's just like, I have a baby. What do I do with this? Yeah, that's right. Where that wouldn't have been the case at all. Yeah, that's right. So, you're alone with this child a lot of the time. I'm talking, you know, sole parents here. Or, you know, even if it's two parents, they're together trying to raise this child. It's like, you know, there's a lot of things that come up and you really don't know how to handle it. And and you get taught to, you know, that the way to settle babies is to leave them to cry, because they learn how to do it on their own, and that nothing could be further from the truth. And, you know, you get taught by, you know, parenting experts a lot of the time, which I find horrifying that even happens now, you know, to send your child to their room when they're, you know, upset or acting out or behaving in a way that's, you know, deemed inappropriate in your family. Whereas actually this child that's acting out is not acting out of some, you know, they're not trying to manipulate you or to, you know, to be bad or to misbehave. Really their misbehavior is your discomfort with their behavior, which is something that you've learned, as I said. But, you know, they need love. They need unconditional love from you. It's like, wow, what is it that you're feeling? You know, so we're going to be doing lots of videos on this channel about, you know, about a new way of looking at parenting too, which is actually, you know, learning how to do this ourselves and then teaching our children. Because a lot of us, I don't know, I'm included in this,
that, you know, once you start to learn about this stuff, the guilt that comes in is unbelievable. So that's a really good place to start, actually, with embodying emotions. It's like just feeling that guilt, you know, when it comes to your children.
Yeah, well, perhaps we could just talk about what it means to embody an emotion, because people might not even be clear.
Yes, we
because this is be helpful for people.
Yeah. We should even start with what emotions actually are, because it's you know, we've sort of talked quite generally about it and sort of assumed a lot.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's dive in. So I think, well, the way I sort of look at you, I mean, I've hinted at it before. It's like it's this it's a little person who's a kind of a messenger from your system that's arising to help you out in some way, to ward off a threat, to push you in the direction of an opportunity, and it's sort of it's energy in motion, essentially. So it's an actual it's an actual energy that's sort of moving through your direct experience in various ways, and comes in different flavors, right? And there are many there are many sub flavors of each main flavor. So with anger, you can have frustration or irritation or primal rage, or resentment. Although resentment's kind of anger with a bit of freeze. It's like it's kind of when repressed anger is kind of seeping out the sides. And what I could say is something about, I've got a little model that I've been devising of how this kind of stuff kind of works. It seems to me that in a nutshell, there's like a kind of a core hurt right at the center. There's a sense of being that childhood wound we all carry, of being perhaps alone, abandoned, unloved, lacking, deficient in some way, and we're constantly looking to defend that wound, and that lives within each of us to greater or lesser degrees.
Whether we
and then we have our kind of whether we realize it or not, in fact. And most of our life is actually compensating. Most of the things people do in their lives is compensating for that core wound. But that's a different topic. But then to protect us, this wound is so deep and painful that we can't look at it at all. So we must constantly protect it with various survival responses, like anger and fear and freezing, which is not really an emotion, but you could think of it as an emotion, to freeze you in place, to hide, to make yourself small, to not say anything, to keep it shut, or to fawn, which is to people please, to make sure that you're not aggravating anyone else. So, because then they might attack you, triggering that core hurt again, right? If they get aggressive to you, you'll suddenly feel like you're in danger. That vulnerability. But as you said, we haven't been taught how to embody these emotions that arise to protect us, right? So then that layer, there's a third layer of repression. Pushing everything down. It's too much to do. We don't know how to deal with it. We push it, we distract from it, we dissociate, we jump into our minds, we get out of the body, we do everything we can to sort of escape from, to push down these emotions, push them away. But it turns out that then you've got all three of these things active in your system, right? They don't just disappear. You've got the hurt right at the core. You've got all this anger and fear, and then you've got a frozen kind of layer on top that's holding it all in. And then to deal with that, you then need to go out and drink alcohol or distract yourself, or that sort of coping behaviors come in. That's kind of where I put the fourth layer.
That's a really beautiful way of looking at it.
And so that's kind of what we're dealing with here in terms of the structure. And then and so there's different, there's various, it's not just emotions, there's these, it makes a difference what layer you're at as well. So in the center, it's more sadness, hurt, shame. Then survival is more like anger, fear. Then there's more of a kind of a freeze, fawn kind of thing in the third layer, which is where we repress it all, pretend none of it's there. And then there's the madness, layer 4, right? And then embodying the emotions is going into each of these layers, often going back and forth between the layers, and letting them be what they are exactly. Like imagine how a 3-year-old would feel anger. Like it doesn't hold back, right? It's fully in the anger. It's almost like that's kind of the right direction to go. But as an adult, you don't want to be completely lost in it. There's a few principles of how to do it well. Some of those principles are being very, present, being quite conscious of what's going on, being well grounded, making sure you're well resourced, so you don't lose it too much, doesn't get too overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then it's simply the challenge is learning how to step more and more into anger, for example, or fear. Like, could you let your entire body shake with fear? Like, I think a lot of people will find that very difficult to just let their whole body shake with fear, or really feel their anger move through their body, or let themselves feel completely ashamed, because each of these parts, people tend to have a tendency to, like, when I work with people, they kind of want to rationalize it away a little bit. There's like, they notice, they're like, oh, there's a whole load of shame. It's like, I might invite them to feel that shame. And sometimes it's like, yeah, but I know I should be grateful for, for this, that, and the other. Yes. And that's a kind of a subtle denial and a denial and a pushing away of the shame.
Yes.
It's people, the emotions, they won't make sense. They will be contradictory. You can have complete shame and complete arrogance, and you can have anger and fear, all contradictory. It's all in there. That's why it's so painful, because some of them are so contradictory. They're banging against each other like that,
Yeah. Yes.
And it's embodying it is using your whole body. So if with anger you're standing up, you're maybe clenching your fists, grunting like Fear, you might be contracting. It's like
yes.
I often get this kind of shaking. And shame, you might just be crying or just feeling so disgusting, self-disgust. Like,
yes.
As you imagine, like, you could imagine other people looking at you and hearing all your darkest secrets, and just feel the body like oh God, like contracting.
Yes.
And it's a skill and an art to move more and more authentically into those movements.
Yes.
And then the flip side is those repression. Sorry, please jump in.
No, I was just going to say it's incredible. And, because our emotions are essentially experienced in the body, which is kind of a foreign concept for a lot of people who have never come across this work before. Like we experience the sensation, right?
Maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Most basically, it's a sensation. It's in the body. That the body is where it's at. The body keeps the score. The body is where the suffering is begins, and where you need to turn in order to begin to resolve it. It's the heart of the whole thing.
That's right. And like I said before, like we spend our entire lives interpreting what's happening down there, which is, we go straight up to that sort of conscious level where we're the conscious part of your mind is sort of analyzing, making sense of, something, making it sound like something that's acceptable, to other people, because, we've been taught that it's all about being acceptable, and so that you can be a part of society, and that you're not going to be alone. You're not going to be rejected by anyone. You're going to be a part of things. And so this is it. This is.
I love this, because you make a deal with the devil. In fact, is what we're all doing. And we're taught kind of to make a deal with the devil, which is like, you get to belong and be part of society and be accepted by other people. But the cost is that you have to repress and numb out all your emotions. But people don't realize that when you numb out all your negative emotions, you also numb out all your positive emotions.
Yes.
And so you kind of have a life of non-living. Your kind of things can feel a bit gray, a bit dull. Like life isn't vibrant and juicy. All of that stuff is kind of lost, and you get a bit of security of knowing that no one's gonna, at least apparent security, the illusion of security that you kind of are going to be accepted. But at a certain point, and perhaps divorce or separation might be one of these triggers, at a certain point, all that stuff gets kicked up, and you realize you can't make that deal anymore, and that you need to start turning towards the emotions. As you say, they're all in the body. And so the task is to get acquainted with your body, to start to get into the body, feeling into it, learning to speak its language, learning to be with it more, learning to listen to what it's been trying to say for decades, but we weren't able to hear.
Yes, absolutely powerful stuff. Unbelievable. Wow. I could talk all day about emotions with you. It's
fun stuff.
It's such a
what's amazing, I love, sorry the lag, I keep on interrupting with it. well, it's amazing. There are so many insights you have of you could call it becoming more conscious. You start, it's just becoming more and more conscious of what's actually happening. It's like, oh, that's what I'm believing, and that's what I'm pushing down.
Yes.
And that's what's driving, that emotion there is driving this feeling here.
Yes.
And you keep seeing more and more of the matrix.
Yes, yes.
And seeing how it unfolds. And then then you can start to flow with the matrix more. And that's when you start, life feels a lot happier.
Yes,
you just start, because you start to integrate some of these emotions, and then you just feel calm, more present, less triggered, more peaceful, more loving, more open to other human beings, much more able to hold space for someone who's going through their own emotional stuff, and just be chill without needing to fix them, change what they're doing, all that kind of stuff. And it's just so good.
Yes, from a physiological perspective, like we're actually designed, like this is a big realization for me, actually, like we're actually designed, like our physiology is designed to feel and to experience our life through feeling, like feeling sensations and, you know, emotions and things, actually experiencing it, not actually making sense of it at all. It's just like, you know, that making sense of that sort of coming out of the body has happened, you know, to escape from what's happening down here, because at some point that became uncomfortable, unacceptable, it's not something that we could do anymore. So I think it's a huge step, though, I think, Ben, for a lot of people. I know it was for me, to start to feel in my body, and at first there wasn't anything. It was numbness. Yeah, I mean, there was nothing. It was like someone would say, "Oh, you know, where do you?" I remember a therapist at the beginning of my journey saying, "Oh, great. So where do you feel that in your body?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like, I was so disconnected.
My what?
Yeah, but you know, it's something that my mum always said this and that, and it meant, you know, it means this and that. I had all these, you know, things to say about it, but could I feel it? No. And so for me, it took a lot of, you know, taking off layers and just looking at what was there, at first, and then slowly starting to touch on and slowly being able to more and more feel and actually experience what's happening in my body, and actually realizing that that is my human experience in the world, and it's a beautiful thing. And yes, there's at times it's you know, once you do start to feel it, it can be really take you aback because it's brand new experience. But definitely worth doing. Yeah, and worth finding you know, a therapist or another human being who can be with you as you experience it, because we you know, as we've touched on, you know, whether a child or an adult, being alone in experiencing this stuff is a terrifying thing. And yet being with another human being who's able to hold that space for you, that space of, you know, ideally unconditional love. You know what, I'm here, whatever comes up inside you, I'm here for you, I'm going to hold you, let's just be. Wow. And so, you know, a therapist can be super useful in you know, in starting to feel this stuff, because they can you know, notice when you might be experiencing something. You know, they might be able to say, oh, it, you know, it feels like, you know, I'm sensing that you might be feeling, you know, some sadness there, let's just be with that. And they'll be like, this is kind of describing my very early experiences. I think there was a lot of anger, as every separated parent will relate to, but I remember experiencing sadness for the first time, like true sadness, and all the sort of nuances and beauty of that and the pain of that. But it was through a therapist just helping me to just notice. It's like that feeling that you have in your chest or in your heart. Let's just be with that. You don't have to make sense of it. You don't have to, you know, do anything with it. It's just, let's just be with it. I'm here with you. Like, so just having that other person who is calm and not trying to make sense of, not trying to do anything with, you know, just being with you as you experience this thing, that was what really, really helped me to start to embody everything that I was feeling and all the emotions that were coming up, and then allowing them to move through me in the way that they're actually designed to, like you said, energy and emotion. And then once that happens, you can, get the message that they're here to deliver for you.
Yeah, beautifully put. Yeah, I've had a similar experience. I can't count the number of wonderful people that I've had the pleasure of working with. Just providing a space, the complete openness. Even from the beginning of my journey, I remember there was one guy in particular who, we didn't do sessions together, but we just talked, and I could just sense his openness, because I was so anxious and I was projecting all my dad's stuff onto him because he's like a professor, and I thought he was super cool. He's like this eccentric sort of spiritual professor dude. I was like, oh, he's so cool. Project all the dad stuff. But he would just laugh, and he's just so open. It's just like, just even knowing that is possible, that space exists, is transformational. And it's so important, because a lot of this stuff, it's very automatic, it's very robotic. The patterns of thinking and the patterns of repression, they're like very trigger happy. So as soon as something happens, it's like brrr, ding 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 ding. The machine goes off, starts running its thought programs, running the repression kind of programs, the addiction programs, whatever it is, to get you to safety in the way that you've always done. And it's almost impossible to just suddenly notice for no reason that there's another way. Yes. There needs to be some compelling event, and it's preferably someone to suggest, to guide you, to open your mind to the possibility that there is another way. Yeah. And that it's not only is there another way, but it is the way that you are in fact looking for, to come back to yourself. Yes,
the truth of who you are. Beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, whatever's happened to you, like in relationship, and these things that happen in relationship, whether you're a little child, or all the different events that happen to you in your life, and then this huge event of like separation, or so we're here to talk about this channel, so I have to bang on about that. This huge thing that happens to you, just has this massive impact. And
there is that is the silver lining to all this stuff, whether it's an addiction breakdown or a separation. It's like, it's the wake-up call. Yes. I know it's, it sucks when you're in it, but it's life is even worse without the wake-up call, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've loved chatting to you today, Ben. Is there anything else you'd like to add about embodying emotions at this point?
What I'd like to add,
just randomly out of the air, there's so many things we could dive into. I think we could talk all day,
there's a million things. No, just that it's, if anyone's wondering why things don't quite feel right, why there's that ennui, the bit of too much anxiety, a bit of depression, compulsive behaviors, the grief of separation, why it doesn't seem to go away.
Yes, they're going from 0 to 1,000. All this
kind of stuff. It's like that. So if emotions, you have no emotions, and then suddenly they're exploding, and you're wondering what's going on. It's simply all to do with getting a little bit of an understanding about how these things want to move, and allowing them to move. And it's very challenging. I'm not saying it's easy, because there's a lot of protective mechanisms in place, and that's why it's helpful to work with someone who's familiar with how those protective mechanisms, and can spot them, and just sort of be like, oh, okay, you're giving, just gently inviting you back.
Yes.
But the journey to embodiment is, in my experience, it was what I was looking for. Yes. In wanting to be the best guitar player ever, in wanting to be the smartest guy, in wanting to drink the most, in whatever, wanting to be funny and cool. It was all just like trying to compensate for just painful emotions held in my body. And it's just knowing that is about the most important thing I've ever learned.
Absolutely. I can so relate to that. Perfect. Well, Ben, how can people, if people would like to follow you, connect with you in any way, work with you perhaps, how would they get hold of you? What's the best way?
Yeah, so you can check out my website, which is drunkenbuddha.net, and I do one-on-one sessions with folks.
Okay.
So sort of guide them through this stuff.
Great.
Getting them in touch with their bodies, embodying emotions, all that good stuff.
Beautiful.
And I have kind of a toolkit of techniques that I put together. It's 115
yes,
like emotional regulation, emotional sobriety techniques. So maybe we can link to that somewhere.
yes, I love that. Let's link all of that stuff in
that's
the description on the video.
that's free, so you can go and check that out and get some ideas, just maybe spark some inspiration. And
yes, perfect.
apart from that, no, just loved this conversation. So thank you for inviting me, Gretel. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Talk again soon.
Sounds good.
Yay. Thanks, Ben. I'll stop it now, I
Awesome.
suppose.